Hello, welcome back to Sky in the Shy. I'm your host Edwin Garcia, and today we're going to talk about Game 2 of the WNBA semifinals and preview Game 3 of the WNBA semifinals. So let's get into it. Chicago Sky lost Game 2 79-68 against the Connecticut Sun, and now the series is officially tied. The game was really close, and the Sky even had a very small 1-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and unfortunately in the fourth quarter the Connecticut Sun just made a huge run, and it was just a little too much to overcome. The Sky started off 59-58, and by the time the run was over it was 67-59, didn't score anything, and we already were entering the midway points. We're just under, a little bit over actually, just over 5 minutes left, and you just cannot win a game where in the fourth quarter you just flat out don't produce anything. And the Sky didn't produce anything in the fourth quarter period. They only had 9 points in the fourth, and that's really the difference in the game. Before that, they were right there, not in the driver's seat, I would say, because even though they were up one, it was a slim margin, but they had every opportunity to take this series and rip Connecticut's heart out, and they were unable to do so. And credit to the Sun, they did what they had to do. They got their win. It wasn't always pretty, but they were able to manage to get the W. They got really big performances from two of their key players. Dwayne Bonner had 15 points starting for the Sun. Alyssa Thomas had 15 points off the bench. We mentioned before, or I mentioned before really, that bench play for the Sun will have to be really good because they only have 3 players coming off the bench. Right now they're only going about 8 deep. In Game 2, they actually went a little bit deeper, but honestly, not really. 2 players played 1 minute, so it's not like they really used the whole roster, even though technically they did. Normally, they just go about 8 deep, and when you look at their stats from Game 2, that's still true. 3 players were at 19 and more minutes, and then you had 2 players at 1 minute, 1 player at 6 minutes. So they're really an 8 deep team, and when you're so thin on the bench in terms of who you can really use and who you realistically use, you really need to get production from those players. They have to hit, and in Game 1 they really didn't. They got outplayed by the Sky offensively. They performed worse than the Chicago Sky bench, but today that flipped. In this game that flipped. The Sun got the kind of production they need to get from those bench players, and they performed relatively well, and that's part of the reason why it was a victory instead of a defeat for the Sun, and they were able to be the difference makers. Other keys to the game and keys to the matchup, I think it was just a matter of it was a perfect storm for the Sun. They were able to kind of hit on all the key parts they needed to, and the Sky weren't. For example, the 3-point shooting from the Sky, again, 26%. That's not going to cut it. I'd say they have to be 36 and above. 36 is around an average 3-point shooting percentage. 36 or above. I'm not saying that they're going to automatically win, but that's a good place to be. Give me 36, 40%. I'm happy. Under that, that's probably going to be a loss. And again, 26%, that's not going to cut it for the Sky. Rebounding, it has to be a close battle. I understand that the Sun are so good at getting rebounds that you're probably not going to out-rebound them. That's going to be very rare, but you have to at least keep it competitive. Stay within 5, 3, a negligible difference. In Game 1, it was dead even, so that's awesome. That's perfect. In Game 2, 39 rebounds for the Sun, 26 for the Sky, and I said it, I believe, in a podcast I was on last week, which I'll actually be sharing this weekend, just kind of uploading the audio for that. I guessed it on a Chicago Bulls podcast, and I mentioned if it's 10 or more, the Sky are losing, and I don't think the Sky cannot rebound the Sun by 10. So you cannot lose that rebounding battle. They will just destroy you, and that's exactly what happened. They lost the rebounding battle by a big margin, and look, they went on that run, and it just was too much to overcome. Turnovers, not as bad as they normally are for the Sky. 14 turnovers. You tell me that before the game, and I'm probably signing up for that reluctantly. I'm like, okay, I guess. So 14-12, not really a huge difference, but still a negative for the team. And obviously fouls were something, again, people are always talking about. 15-11, it was just a fourth quarter run to me. That's the game. That's when the tide swings the most. And the other things you look at are just kind of throughout there. Why was it close? Were they able to make a run and you couldn't overcome? I think your shooting wasn't good, your rebounding wasn't good. Turnovers just a tad bit too high. I don't really think the free throw discrepancy really made a difference in the game. The Sky shot very well in the free throws. They only missed one, 11 for 12, and the Sun have kind of struggled with their free throws, 11 of 18, so barely above 60% from the free throw line. So yeah, that's where we sit now. We're 1-1. We've seen 2 games, and we're gonna find out what happens here on Game 3, which when they go back to Chicago, back to Wintrust Arena, which I'm sure the Chicago Sky are very excited to do, even though, Connecticut really hasn't been a hostile place. But Wintrust isn't known for being hostile, so hopefully they can bring the energy. In terms of individual player production, I think that we didn't get really spectacular games from anyone. Obviously, there's a lot of factors for that. The Sun are a really, really good team, and they're going to kind of bring you down a bit, and we've seen that. And the Sky are also really tired. They played the first round elimination, second round elimination, game 1 doubled overtime, then less than 48 hours to have to play game 2. I'm really so impressed with how well they looked, even with all those conditions. But when you really look at the stat line and look at the stat sheet, nothing really jumps out. It doesn't feel like anyone really had a magnificent game, and I think that's another factor. We need some players to shine, and really hardly anyone can really be counted for as that. Kalia Copper led all players with 13 points. Candace Parker led all players in rebounds with 7. And then, of course, Vandersloot led the team in assists with 6. But for the most part, it was kind of pedestrian to slightly above average numbers for most players. And I think another key is the bench. The bench didn't really have anyone perform well. Dolson had 18 minutes, which is solid, but didn't do much with it. Hebert only played like the final closing time, garbage time essentially. And Diamond, 20 minutes, 5 points, 3 rebounds, not bad. 1 assist, kind of, okay. So I think the issue as well is the Sky have about, I would say for any given day, the Sky have 5 players that can play spectacularly. 5 players. You got Parker, Vandersloot, Kalia Copper, Diamond DeShields, and Allie Quigley. They have 5. But I don't feel comfortable naming which one of those 5 will play well on any given game. It really feels like it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. Like someone will kind of ball out. And I think in this game, obviously, no one really did. But normally, someone will ball out. And I think the concern is there's a lack of consistency as to who will be your top players and who will perform at the top level. And we've seen that so far. It's been kind of a committee. Like 3 of those 5 will hit, and maybe one hits really well and has one of the a top 5 performance for themselves for the year or something like that. And that's kind of how things have gone. Sometimes it's Quigley, sometimes it's Dolson, sometimes it's DeShields, and Copper's been really good all year, so she's probably the most consistent, I think, player so far. But I won't say it's a concern. I think at this point you just need to work with what you have and try to optimize your team as much as possible. But it's something I definitely want to unpack and reflect on after the season's over, because we're right in the thick of it. So I think at this point, hey, you just got to figure out what's your best matchups, what's your best lineups, what's your best way to counter the things they're trying to do, and that's got to be the focus. But I'm definitely looking into that, and I'm sure the Sky will and James Wade will in the offseason. Who can we consistently count on? Who has really great potential, but it's a bit too sporadic to put your eggs in that basket, and how the bench will shape out and things of that nature. But it's just something I noticed, and something that I think has been a factor, is that it's hard to tell game by game who's going to play well, and I don't think that's a great thing. But what's a pretty good thing? Being 1-1. I mentioned it before the series started. You just got to win one of these games. And yes, you want to win 2. You had an opportunity to take the second one there. You were right there going into the 4th. But hey, it didn't happen. End of the day, it's 1-1. That's the reality. It's a 1-1 series. And now you go back to Chicago and the way you wanted to. Up 1-1. Win your home games. This is over in 4, right? That's got to be the focus. That has to be the mindset until proven otherwise. Until the Sun take a game, then obviously you adjust and try to force a game 5 in Connecticut. So we'll see if that happens. We'll see what the Sky are able to do here. But to me, that's the mentality that you have to have. You have to still come off positive and comfortable in your opportunities and your odds of advancing. And I actually am. I think the team is in a good spot. I think we've seen some of their best moments and some not so good moments. And they're going to be right where they want. They're right where they want to be which is 1-1 going back home. All right, so let's go ahead and start previewing that Game 3 here. So Game 3, as we've mentioned, it's going to be in Chicago, Wintrust Arena, on Sunday at 12 p.m. Central Time, which is kind of a weird time to have a Game 3 of WNBA playoffs. But, it's going to be a matinee, if you will. So it'll be an interesting matinee. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I'm sure all of Skytown is as well. And I want to talk about some of the keys to the game. So what's interesting during the playoffs is the keys to the game, it's the same matchup. So you start to figure out what things really matter, and you get a lot more context for how important certain aspects are. And for me, I think there's a couple things the Sky really, really have to do. We mentioned a few of them before as a team aspect, but I want to talk about certain individual aspects. I think one thing you have to do is you have to get Candace Parker going. She didn't really ever get going in Game 2. She did pretty well getting going in Game 1 for pockets, but they have to run plays for her. They have to run actions for her. I want to see her doing more than just bringing the ball up, passing it off, and never getting it back. I want to see her a little bit more in the post. If she does run, on actions, I want her running point. I want her to have options to be back in the play and not just to move the ball. I'd love them to do some horn set actions where she's rolling to the rim with Vandersloot or maybe with Quigley off the dribble, and the defense has to make a decision whether they're gonna guard Quigley, guard Parker as she rolls to the rim. Gives Parker a chance to get a little bit more aggressive. Those are the kind of things I'd like to see. I need to see more Parker. The game has changed a lot, basketball, but you still want to feed your big and keep your big happy, keep them engaged. And Parker stays engaged, but I just think she needs to be more involved in the offense, especially early on. I would probably run the first 2 or 3 plays for Parker. And hey, if Parker kicks out to an open shooter, great. But I'm like, hey, let's just establish that, it's going to be a battle down there. And we're going to feed her early and often. So that's what I would like to see initially. And I think we need to see a good Alec Quigley game. We need 3-point shooting, especially with a team like the Sun that love to pack the paint, love to be physical. You know what they don't love? 3-point shooting. They don't like to do perimeter defense. I think that's where the Sky can shine. And I think that's where Quigley can be an X factor. I think that's where you can really hurt them. If you're hitting your threes, you're hitting your shots, they're going to have to close out more. That's going to lead to opportunities to drive to the rim. And even though they like to pack the paint, it's hard when you have to run out, close out, and then try to, run back and cover and recover. That's going to cause scenarios where you can start to increase havoc and you can start to make the paint a place that you want to go. Because if they don't want you to go there, you can just hit your shots and you're causing problems for them. They're going to be uncomfortable. So I think it's going to come down to Quigley. No surprise when Quigley shoots well and plays well, the team likely wins because she's the 3-point shooter. And again, 3-point shooting is a team key as well. And as one of the players who shoots the most threes on the team, I believe the most threes on the team actually. I would have to check the stats, but I would be surprised if anyone's actually shooting more threes than Quigley. She's a big part of it. She's the starting guard, and she's a shooter. So we need the shooter to shoot and to shoot well. There have been games where she's been kind of phased out, and there's been games where she's been cold, and there's been games where they haven't really looked for her as much. So again, that's another player I'm running, hammer screen actions. I'm trying to get corner threes for Quigley and trying to get her more involved. And I think that's what you have to do with Quigley, because if not, she's not the greatest defensive guard there is, so you're not really gonna get too much. You get like a negligible contribution, like okay, cool, but that's because you're taking that because you're gonna get incredible 3-point shooting, incredible scoring ability on the other side of the ball. If you're not getting that, then you have an average, below average defender, and then like a shooter not shooting. That's just not what you want. We know Kalia Copper's going to ball out. I'm not too worried about that. And we'll see what happens with the Shields. She has her hot games. She has her not games. That it's been like that all year. I expect it to stay like that. I'm just at this point, again, I'm just hoping for the good, great Diamond the Shields. That's all I'm hoping for. I understand I'm not going to get that every day, and I can't pencil that in as a given. I'm just, I'm hoping for it. And hopefully we do get it. If we get the engaged, aggressive, active Diamond the Shields, again, for the postseason, postseason after the season. But Diamond DeShields has some of the best potential on this team. She's a true athletic two-way guard that can be one of the best players in this league. I still truly believe that. It's the consistency this year that's been a struggle. So I'm hoping we can see that, but let's not forget, I know some people seem to have forgotten her all-star performance and her, claiming she wants to be one of the best players in the league, and why can't she be? I agree. She can totally be that. So I'm hoping we see more of that, and I hope people start realizing, oh, she's actually really, really good, like really, really good, and she's dynamic and she's a difference maker. So, and I think she can totally be a difference maker. I think the team can still win if she isn't. Again, there's around 5 players that can really, have incredible games on the Sky roster. You need like 3 or 4 to hit, as I mentioned earlier. So it doesn't have to be her, but if it is her, that really helps, especially coming off the bench. That means your bench is getting some incredible production, and that's always good. That kind of overwhelms and buries teams. There's no surprise the bench that has scored the most in each game has won. There's a reason for that. It's because these teams are pretty evenly matched. As you can see with Game 1 going to double overtime, Game 2 wasn't as close, but going into the 4th, it was right there. So when you're looking at every minute of every game, it's usually close. It's been close the whole time. So, having a explosive player on the bench who produces like that can be a tipping point. That can be a difference maker. And Diamond DeShields can be that difference maker. So I hope she is for Game 3 on Sunday. And then as far as the team overall, just conceptually, it's the same kind of things you would think. We need good 3-point shooting. Again, the rebounding battle has to at least break even. You don't have to dominate, but you got to break even. Keeping turnovers down. So those are really the general, just basic things that need to happen for a win. I would be shocked if those things go the other way and they win. Maybe 3-point shooting, because it depends what the volume is and, how many you shot, things of that nature. But rebounding, turnovers, bench production, if those things aren't happening, I just have trouble seeing, you need like a 50-point Candace Parker game, which, you could maybe get, but that would also lead into my first point, which is you got to get her active. So you're going to need some incredible play if you don't get that. And you're better off just taking care of the small details and not needing some kind of, demigod performance on the court to win the game. That's not what you necessarily are hoping to plan for. So hopefully they take care of business on those aspects and they can get the W. Regardless of what happens in Game 3, there will be a Game 4. Again, it's a best of 5 series, so it's the first team to 3 wins. And here we are, Game 3 coming up on Sunday, and Game 4 definitely going to happen regardless on Wednesday. That's going to be at 7 p.m. CT. And then we don't know after that. It depends what happens. If the Sky win their 2 games, they can take care of business and end it. If they split again, we'd go to a Game 5. So it's going to be really interesting. Same things happening in the Aces Mercury series where they're tied up as well, 1-1. So again, this is the big moments, and we're going to see what happens. And that's why, even though Game 1 was great, it's a best of 5 series, first to 3. It's a long road. No, you don't want to get too high, too low. Not only as players, but just as right now, I believe I'm talking to mainly the fans. You don't want to get too high. You don't want to get too low. It's a long game. It's a long series. If they lost by 80 yesterday, that's not going to, besides it be mentally demoralizing, it's not going to change Game 3. You can come out, win Game 3, win Game 4, win the series. The goal is first to 3. You can't panic throughout the steps of the process. So, like I said, they're right where they wanted to be. I mean, 0-2 would have been amazing, but the 0-2 is really hard. That Suns team is very good. They're at home for 2 games, beating them back-to-back 2 games where they couldn't figure it out. That would be really devastating and really surprising. And it almost kind of happened until that 4th quarter showed up. But anyway, almost, the world is filled with a bunch of almost. Point is, Suns took care of business. They won. The Sky took care of business in Game 1. And now we're going to see what happens in Game 3 and then Game 4. So hopefully we can celebrate some Sky victories at Wintrust Arena, but we'll have to wait till Sunday early afternoon to find out. And again, for this podcast, we're going to keep it going. We're going to keep the consistency, making these recap pods and doing them after each game. So we'll have a recap pod for Game 3 out, I believe, Monday. Probably late Monday afternoon, something of that nature. I have to figure out my cadence for that one, but that one will I think be a little bit easier since the games will finish a little bit earlier. So hopefully I can have that pod up not too late on Monday, and then of course we have the Wednesday pod as well after Game 4. Hopefully we're celebrating a Chicago Sky win. Hopefully the Chicago Sky are in the WNBA Finals. That would be an absolutely incredible thing. But there's still a long way to go. It's 1-1, and these 2 games are I cannot stress enough how important they are. They are very well could be the series if you don't take care of business. So Chicago Sky have not been a good home team. They do not have a good home record. They have a losing record at home, and that's been something people have talked about and discussed. So it's going to be, I wouldn't say, I don't think I'm going to read too much into that, but I will say that, the Chicago Sky fans that do show up have to be loud. They have to be aggressive. They have to bring that energy and make the Sky feel comfortable, because they know it just like we know it, that the record at home hasn't been good. We've heard the rumors that, not rumors, but just like conversation that, the crowd's quiet. It's just the energy's not there, and they need to bring the energy. This is semifinals. This is big basketball, the biggest games in Chicago Sky history, and that energy has to match the significance of the game. So if you're going, be loud, be aggressive, be the person who's bringing the section on and inspiring some enthusiasm, because those things help. I know they seem kind of silly, or what does it matter, but it helps. It creates momentum, it creates energy, it creates confidence, it creates loud sounds that can distract defenders and create turnovers. And we've seen momentum switch because the crowd just starts getting them going, and it becomes a really hostile place. We've seen players miss, free throws and fumble basketballs and things of that nature. There's momentum and energy that gets felt, and that it does impact the players. It does create a certain energy and sense, either good or bad. So make sure they feel like, wow, this crowd's really behind us, and this place is so aggressive. I don't think I can miss a shot in here. I think this other team's in trouble. That comes from that. If it's kind of pedestrian, then it just kind of feels like, a regular game, and that helps the road team. The road team should be feeling pressure. The Sun should be feeling pressure. They lost their home court advantage. They lost game 1. They're going on the road to 2 games with their season on the line. They're the ones in trouble. They're the favorites. They're the team that only lost 6 games, that went so far last year, that have been front runners for a couple years now as a top team in the WNBA and have been unable to do it. That's the Connecticut Sun. The Chicago Sky are a 16-16 first round team, right? Now we know there's context to that, but at the end of the day, that's what they are. They haven't been this far in since 2016. They are not the team that everyone expected. They have to win and make it to the championship or the years of failure. Many people just barely had them in the top 4 to start the year, and look, they're in the top 4. So they've actually, despite all the regular season drama, when push came to shove, they actually did hit most people's expectations. Maybe they'll get to the ultimate goal and still achieve it. Very, very possible. But the Sun were definitely in that conversation. They were not anywhere but like top 2 according to most people's predictions and according to the last couple years, and the record reflects that, number 1 team. So the pressure's on them. They lose this series, and they're out again, and they lose to a team like the Sky who didn't have it together. There's already been murmurs and conversations on the Sun are just, they're not built for it. Something's up with it. Something's wrong with them, and they're not figuring it out. And what does that mean? If next year another good season, and will they even win anything? And that's the kind of pressure, that's the kind of conversations that are happening around the Connecticut Sun, and they're the ones who have to deal with overcoming that criticism and not letting that doubt creep in, right? That's their job. The Sky don't have any of that. They're kind of sort of playing with house money. They've already impressed a lot of people, surprised a lot of people, and now it's just can they continue capitalizing on that? They don't have any pressure, just like the Phoenix Mercury pretty much don't. It's the Sun and Aces are supposed to win these rounds. If they don't, there's going to be criticisms about those teams for failing to do what they were supposed to do. The other 2 teams, it's just, hey, do the best you can, and let's see what happens. So a good hostile home environment will help the Sky and will add more pressure to the Sun from whatever they're already feeling. So we'll see what happens, and either way, we'll talk about it, we'll discuss it, we'll break it all down here on Sky and the Shy podcast after Sunday's game. I'll talk to you then.